Every bottle of whiskey has a story. Tonight we sit down with one of those people who carries that story into the room.
A guy who lives between the industry and the community, who goes by Whiskey Gorilla on Instagram and answers to Chris Ritch in real life.
We met him at a bottle drop at Corona Cigar Company in Heathrow, and we knew right then, this guy belongs on the show. Let's get into it.
Let's go.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yo, step right in, it's a funky display. Talking shit, today's the vibe we portray. No filters, no rules, just letting it flow. Strap in, folks, it's the shit show. Welcome to the shit show, buckle up tight. We dropping raw truth, keeping it light. Laughs and chaos, that's how we play. Talking shit today, all night, all day. All day.
Guys, we've got Chris on the line with us. And so, Chris, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself? Let the folks know who you are.
Yeah, thanks, guys. My name's Chris Ritch, otherwise known as the Whiskey Gorilla. I've been in the business about 25 years, worked for a Rare Character for about 6 months now, but have been focusing on the bourbon side of the industry since launching Angel's Envy in 2011.
Nice.
So worked for a few brands. Thank you. Yeah, worked for a few brands over the years, started with Angel's Envy after the distributor side, worked for Widow Jane, Heaven's Door, Few Spirits, to name a few. And then right before this stint with Rare Character, I was with Willett for the last few years. So definitely have gravitated towards whiskey in the industry and love it.
I think I saw that you had a Willett connection. I didn't know about the Angel's Envy connection. Interestingly enough, when we were at the Orlando Whiskey Fest, we got a chance to sit down with the gentleman who's launching True Story, who's the grandson, right? Of
the son, one of the sons and grandsons of the Angel's Envy founders.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. This is such a small world to
they really is.
Yeah, to have the joy of being a fan of, because even though Lumpy and I'll say Big Red too, even though he's a little more broad in his likings, we're still basic bitches when it comes to this. So, we get to fanboy a little bit about it. So that's a pretty broad history. What is it that brought you to Rare Character of the choices that you had?
One, meeting Pablo. So having that initial interaction and relationship with Pablo was a big target. He's definitely the face of the brand, and meeting him, always hearing the great reputation he has and the numerous stories of his adventures. But meeting him in person and seeing, how genuine and real he is. He's not just, a fabricated character like he sounds like. He is a character, but no fabrication. And seeing him in action, and then, having the opportunity to interview with him and his co-founder, Peter Nevaglovsky, those two are kind of the yin and yang of the company.
Okay.
And, it's kind of, what they're doing and what they have done in such a short amount of time. It's really, really got my attention.
Having the opportunity to meet Pablo at the bottle drop where we met you, I can understand that. He definitely had a personality, and he was very informed and very fun to talk to.
For sure. And has that reputation. And he's one of those infectious people where you meet him once and have a conversation and you're best friends. He's like, he has that effect. Charisma. It's the level of charisma I think that he has, that people love him.
Sure. Well, and then, so you got the chance to interact with Pablo, kind of brought you in, got you the interest. So since you've joined Rare Character, maybe give us your take on your experience with the company so far, and then maybe set up for people that don't know, although I don't know anybody that's not aware of Rare Character, the people that may not know anything about it. What's special and unique about Rare Character? Yeah,
good question. For a long time, I was on the outside looking in on what Rare Character was doing from a competitor. And, when you're a competitor, you kind of roll your eyes and you're like, yeah, what are they doing? When you see someone being successful, and, the single barrels came on the scene, and they kind of started cart before the horse, if you will, with single barrels before having like everyday available SKUs, items. And so, that's where they got the notoriety of these single barrels. Single barrels themselves aren't anything unique, but kind of the quality and also rare
Sure.
aspect of the whiskeys that Pablo was getting his hands on was what was getting our attention, because, he has connections in the industry, from his tenure as a restaurateur, as a bar owner.
Sure.
He was nominated for Bartender of the Year, Tales of the Cocktail years ago, and has been selecting single barrels since before a lot of us even knew it was a thing.
Nice.
So he has those connections and contacts to build those relationships and get access to stuff that normal, random brands, non-distilling producers off the street would not get access to. So, being a non-distilling producer, we aren't going to change that. We're never going to open a distillery and say, we're going to launch a gin.
Sure.
That's kind of our shtick. And, where a lot of the non-distilling producers are kind of on the decline right now, we're the opposite of that. We are on a steady incline, not only with the popularity of our single barrels, but with the other items that we have coming that we've already launched and some even bigger things coming down the road that really got my attention when I was interviewing.
So you've raised an important term that we've talked about here before. So an NDP, a non-distilling producer. So I'm sure you've had to confront that with people who are the purist on the grain to glass, or, that think that there's a better way, that you should be producing your own. What's your answer to that? And how have you handled that conversation with others?
I don't think it's as challenging in today's world as it was in the beginning. We mentioned Angel's Envy as a brand. They were a non-distilling producer, and now they are distilling now, but back then and for a long time. And, I remember an article about the rye, and it was, kind of highlighting MGP and people sourcing from MGP, and kind of put a spotlight on non-distilling producers, and people were just kind of, gasped. Grab your pearls. The people aren't making the distillate they're putting in the bottle. And, right? You remember those times when people just couldn't understand. But, wineries have been doing it for years, negociants that go around and source, different wines and casks and barrels. It's been done in other industries. It was really nothing new, but it was just kind of people hadn't heard of it. So being a non-distilling producer back in the day might have caught people off guard, because you think, one of the first questions when people, learn about work here, like, oh, where's your distillery? And then I have to kind of go through that. Oh, well, we're an undistilling producer,
Sure.
Basis, and have that kind of dance for a minute until they understand. But it's nothing new to the alcohol industry. It's the same as someone, I only eat at farm to table restaurants.
Sure.
And okay, cool. That's a choice. Just like if you're only drinking grain to glass.
Right.
But there's a lot of great restaurants that source from Cisco and Cheney Brothers and everything that still have great quality stuff. I guess that, that food broker, great, food, farm to table analogy, I guess, works in this situation. And
Sure.
It's nothing new in the alcohol industry, and definitely not anything new, in the food and beverage industry.
Well, I know.
Just education.
Yeah. And recently I, was able to watch a really, good short article on a YouTube channel or someplace where they were talking about what happens when a distillery shuts down, and they've got, 10 years worth of investment that they've got a whole lot of inventory for. Now, what do?
Oh, yeah.
And so that's a good source for some places to be able to get a hold of what's already been aged, what's already been created. And so long as it's got good product in the barrel, then you can go and do other things with it. So I think that's a good idea.
Sure.
You mentioned earlier about some of the other NDPs kind of on the downcline while you all are on the upcline. I read an article recently, I think it was today or yesterday, about, and we've all heard this before, the bourbon industry as a whole is in a decline. The demand is down. It's not as big as it used to be. What is your opinion as an insider and somebody deep in the industry? Is bourbon truly on the decline like everybody says it is? Or, and I can't remember who it is, I wish I could give the source for that, is it the secondary that's on the decline, not the actual producers or distributors that are on the decline?
Good question. Overall, I think that, I've been saying for a couple of years that eventually the bubble had to pop, because of, supply and demand. Demand was so high, people couldn't keep up with the supply. And that's now flops, where there's a lot more supply and availability, because the years ago when people saw, the popularity spiking, they laid down a lot more whiskey. They started pumping out and distilling a lot more, but also laying down a lot more. And now all of that whiskey is turning 6, 7 years old, 5, 6, 7 years old. And these distillers are like, okay, where are all these people that were drinking bourbon 4 years ago?
Right.
And I think those people are still there. We're here, we're talking about it.
Right.
We met at a great event, sharing great whiskey at a cool account.
Sure did.
I think it's still a thing, but I think that people are buying differently. They don't have to collect every single one. They'll maybe just collect the ones that really sound interesting to them.
Mm-hmm.
For those type of, people are still drinking as a whole. I think the younger generation isn't drinking like we drank. A lot of my friends, their kids are now entering college, and the kids in college right now do not celebrate college like we celebrated college, or at least I did, and I know my friends did.
Yeah,
sure.
Yep.
And so it's kind of a different climate for alcohol as a whole, with THC and all that stuff,
right,
taking a hit out of alcohol. But that can be a topic for a different call.
I actually saw
people are still drinking.
Yeah, I actually saw an article that spoke specifically to the new ventures in microdosing, the new ventures in THC, and how that is having an impact on how that 21 to 30 crowd is imbibing differently than maybe that same crowd used to. So yeah, that's very interesting. But I think it's also been said that some of the smaller producers or the NEPs can sometimes be problematic for a market. But I don't necessarily buy that line, because it seems that you've had the opportunity to provide color, texture, where otherwise there's standards, and you kind of get to play with the molds. So what do you think about that? What do you think about that commentary that sometimes what you guys are doing over there might not be good for the industry?
I don't know that I necessarily, heard that directly yet. But I could see where that would be, because we are disruptive. There's a lot of things that we're doing, and I guess the others, when they're not doing well, are seeing our success. So, people can, kind of look sideways at that probably.
People
but
getting
I don't think
jealous at success. Yeah.
Because it's not, what are they doing differently? Why are we down double digits, but they're up double digits? I'm sure, like any competition, when you look at somebody that's succeeding and you're not, I'm sure ask questions, or you should be asking questions.
Sure.
What are they doing differently? And, I think there's a few things that fall into that we're doing differently. One, the people that we have running the ship, Pablo, being Pablo, and Pete being a veteran and knowing the sales side of things and being able to help us navigate that. He's had numerous brands over the years, very successful brands, Avo Cachaça being one of them. So we kind of have that double-edged sword with Pablo and Pete leading the ship. And Pablo getting his hands on really cool stuff, especially in the beginning, like TKO and some of these other barrel codes that people were, that are still asking about.
That's awesome.
And now that the demand isn't what it was and supply is spiking, we're getting access to even more cool stuff.
Right.
At even better prices. Because, there was so many hedge funds and investors that bought barrels as stock, as an investment, as a valued stock. And now that stock value is dropping because the supply is there, the demand isn't. And so they're looking to sell before they start losing more money. And we're like, hey, what do you got? And we're right there to say, I'll take these 100 barrels at this price. Where before we could only afford 50 of those barrels because the price was almost double.
Right.
So you would see a lot of the initial single barrels. There were younger inventories, 6, 7, 8 year, in a lot of the original single barrels that we launched. And then now most everything is the youngest, unless it's something, a cool rye or something. Most everything's 9, 10, 11 year.
Wow.
Well, speaking of
at the same price point.
Yeah. Well, speaking of a 9 year, so I want to ask you about 2 bottles.
What do you got?
So there's a bottle that I'm holding on to now that you might have handed over to me and Pablo signed when we were at this event.
Nice.
So looking at this Black Angus, right? So tell me a little bit more about this label as you can. And then I've got to get your take on a not hot dog flavored water, this Costco bottle. You have to have seen that, the story that's unfolding about this bottle that's going out on secondary for exorbitant, amazing prices.
Which I'm sure you have.
I tried to get a hold of that bottle, but, it was too late.
You waited 30 seconds. You couldn't get it.
It's crazy. And it's fun. It's kind of, when you see something, not just like that, but like it's something that goes viral and everybody is talking about it, and every news outlet is sharing it. And it's kind of inside our bubble. Maybe, that joke might go around, but for it to make it out to general population of people, and the Costco, I got that dog in me hot dog.
Yeah.
I mean, it hit. And I've been using that as a sample because we knew it was coming because we bottled it. I thought it had already landed or been released, but it was 2 weekends ago that it actually got released, and that's when the friggin' spark ignited.
Sure.
But I've been showing, I had a picture from when it was bottled that I was kind of showing as an example of the cool things you could do with our labels. That's one of the kind of the angles of our popularity is the customization.
Sure.
You can make the label, the top, 2/3 of the label look like anything you want within reason, copyright,
Right,
vulgarity, etc. And that's kind of, when you see a Costco hot dog $1.50 that says I got that dog in me, that's a perfect example of it. There's some really cool ones that I've seen. I mean, it's fun to see everybody in their own expression of what they think is funny,
Sure.
what they think looks good. And then there's ones that are unassuming that you're like, that label, having the wax match the colors of the picture. There's ways to bring the label together, and some of them look amazing. Like, I really think that Black Angus, that the graphics on there looks awesome.
It does.
It does.
I was just looking at that one, and it's clean, and the farmhouse in the background, the Black Angus cattle in the front there. It's a very clean look, and I've seen a lot of rare character bottles over the last few years. And you're right. The things you all can do with your labels does help kind of catch the attention. And we all know marketing, that's an important thing.
Sure.
But so what can you tell us about the Corona, the Black Angus Corona bottle that we have here in front of us? How did that come about?
Mm-hmm. So that is a collaboration with Tommy DiAdio from Corona Cigars. And the Black Angus, that's a cigar line that they carry. It's one of their house lines, from what I understand. It's called Black Angus, and they have, the owner, Jeff of Corona Cigars, has a lot of Black Angus cattle farms.
Oh, okay.
And I believe that their tobacco and cattle farms, kind of the pastures share kind of symbiosis in a way.
Okay.
The cattle help fertilize, and, the tobacco is Florida grown tobacco. And that's the tobacco that they use in the wrapper and whatnot of the Black Angus cigars. They wanted to kind of tie that in with one of their cigar lines and kind of, cross market, if you will, and to release the Black Angus, bourbon and the single barrel.
Well, let me just say that you are just spitting out facts, sir. Like, you educated this dumbass on all sorts of stuff just now. So thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. The juice inside is great as well. That's the funny thing.
Oh, yeah.
And the hot dog bottle is selling for $1,000, but hey, I bet you the whiskey inside is probably pretty good too. And I don't think any of these guys will ever find that out.
I have no way of knowing.
Right.
Yeah. But what you've got there, the Black Angus, is going to be barrel code NEL. And each barrel code has a certain distillery, age, and mash bill attached to it. A lot of times, there'll be one-offs where we have 50 barrels of it, and it comes and it goes. The example I always use is like the TKO.
Right.
Tennessee, rye. I'm guessing probably Dickel. I don't know. There's not many people making rye that is going to blow people's minds like this one did in Tennessee. And then people are, like I said, are still asking, like, hey, can I pick a TKO? I'm like, yeah, that'd be nice. Let me get in my time machine and go back 2 years and never release, and I'll grab you one.
Nice.
Right? It's like, the last time I was at this restaurant, this was the special. I want that. Like, well, ma'am, that's not all special anymore,
Yeah.
And so it takes a little education. And, even when people that have picked barrels before, they're like, well, what are we picking? I want to pick this and this and maybe this. And I was like, that's not how this works. This is what I've got. These are the new codes. Like right now we were just up in Atlanta and we had 3 different bourbon codes that we were pushing. All of them were different. All of them unique in their own way. One to mention is called DYM, which is 10-year, 74 corn, 18 rye. There's only one distillery that makes that. If you Google it, it's rhymes with Schmartin. And it was delicious juice. It had this nice kind of confection and baking, icing side to the front. It was something that I was like, this is cool. Having a 10-year single barrel from a distillery that I probably have never tasted any of these, mash bills before. And while we don't have those cool things that you've heard about from a year or two ago, we've got these new cool things coming.
Sure.
KHR is another one that we were just pouring, is a high rye 9-year-old Kentucky. And all these are going to come out retail $99.99. So these are 9 and 10-year-old Kentucky bourbons for $100.
I can't wait to phone a friend. I can't wait to see these in Florida. Let me say that.
We've got a few coming to Florida as well.
So speaking of Florida, Chris,
yeah.
I'm assuming that you know the Florida market really well. What does the Florida whiskey market look like? And do you feel that it's underserved or do you think it's growing?
I think it's probably maintaining, because it is such a huge state. I have worked this market for many, many years, and to navigate, if you think about from Key West, Pensacola, in other parts of the country, you could cross 4 states in that amount of time and distance. And so it's just such a huge state to navigate. And there's so many pockets, with the Gulf Coast, Tampa, St. Pete, Sarasota, South Florida. You guys are in that central market with, Orlando, that leads over kind of in Daytona and with that central segment, the Panhandle, Jacksonville. And there's just so many different sub-markets within a big market like Florida. So it's tough.
Yeah.
For someone to come in from outside of the state and be like, oh, I want to work Florida. Where should I go? And they're like, well, where do you want to start? Because it's just, you could go to Tampa or you can go to Miami. You can't usually hit both in the same trip. They're separate trips.
I think that everybody should start in Central Florida.
Correct. The Orlando market is a good starting
point. Yeah, absolutely. Spread out from there.
Yeah. I am definitely, a strong supporter of the Central market, Tampa, Orlando. If it's within 2 hours drive of me in St. Pete here, I've spent a ton of time within that kind of radius and love Florida. I'm a 4th generation Florida boy. And, it's unique to be native and kind of see all the changes here in Florida with all the people moving here from up north.
So are you a Florida cracker?
I am. My grandfather and great-grandfather buried in Lake Butler.
Wow. And
my great-grandfather ran cattle from South Carolina after the Civil War and died in 1910.
Wow.
You don't get too many people that have been in Florida for that long. I'm close to native, but I learned to walk slightly before I moved to Florida, but I've been here ever since.
About a year ago, I met a 7th generation Floridian. I was like, what were your parents, Seminole Indians?
Yeah. If you kind of do the math, you're like, wait, hold on, 5, 6. Okay, yeah, that's a lot. But yeah, yeah.
Well, let me segue here because I think that Lumpy's going to die over here drooling at what we poured in our glass.
I've been smelling it.
Well, we want to get into it, but so there was a release that I saw. I got into a raffle for the chance to buy it, and I missed it. This is a single barrel release that there will be no more ever of this Commander Club. So you were gracious enough to send us some of this. But what would you like to tell the audience and tell us as we're getting into this Commanders Club?
Chris, hold on. I got to say one thing as part of our show. Hey, Chris, what's in our glass?
What's in the glass? What's in the glass? Sip slow, talk slick, made the good times last. Clink it one time, then we run that track. Talking shit today, what's in the glass? 2 mics, 1 vibe, big grin in the room. Notes in the air like a bassline groove. Sniff, sip, then the truth gets passed. We don't start the show till we answer. What's in the glass?
Hey, I'm about to tell you. First off, I'm glad that you guys get to start off. Thank you. There we go. I'll join you on that one.
All right.
Anything like that. That we're starting off with this one. Usually this is something like I would call a dessert that we'd finish off the night with something special like this. But I'm glad we're starting here. This is the lowest proof we're going to be pouring tonight at 110, which is kind of funny. This is the lowest proof that we're going to be pouring tonight.
I like where this is going.
So
just made my nipples hard.
All right. Hey, calm down. So I always like to taste. I taste an order proof just because you don't want to throw yourself into 130 and then have to come back to 110. It's your palate's it's going to not compute. So starting here is for what we're tasting tonight, I think a good place. But we're also starting with something special. So, Commander's Club is a small batch Grand Cuvée Reserve, from the mind of Pablo. Pablo, being a restaurateur and barman, not only is he a whiskey head, but he is a big wine guy as well. So he is coming at this release from a wine mindset where you're blending the Grand Cuvée Reserve. A Grand Cuvée and wine is the finest blend. So him putting that Grand Cuvée Reserve is kind of a nod to winemaking and wine blenders. I started in the industry for the first 10 years on the wine side of things. I kind of developed my palate and strengthened my palate from the wine side of things.
Okay.
It is different taste, obviously, between wine and spirit, but it's still the same palate. It's still the same taste and smells on the flavor wheel, all that. So, when he comes after this with, from a wine mindset and focusing on the blend and blending components of flavors. So we've got a 10-year blended with a 16-year. In the full bottle, you can see the gorgeous color. Hopefully you can see the color in your glass and in that sample bottle. But it's got this rich red, like I was showing it off last week in Georgia, and I had numerous people say, is this finished? Is this in like a port barrel or a wine barrel? Because that redness, it does look like it was finishing something.
Sure.
But that's all that 16-year. That gorgeous color comes from that 16-year. Blending it with a Kentucky 10-year, you kind of get the complexities of both. They both bring something to the blend. I don't know if you guys have taken a sip, but
it's delicious.
It's got this luscious side to it that is just it's round. It's almost juicy on the mid palate. Mm-hmm. I mean, the roundness and juicy angle of it is just not like anything I've tasted in a while. It really, the first time I tasted it, I was like, oh, okay.
I just did that Kentucky chew.
There you go. It does. It has that mouthfeel and that extra roundness that's delicious.
I can really understand. Mrs. Big Red is a big finished bourbon and whiskey person. So we have a lot of dark color bottles at our house. So I can see why they would ask that, because I was kind of thinking about asking, was this finished, especially when you brought up the wine. But I can see where they were going with this, because it does. The legs are still coming down the side of my glass several minutes later, and that's crazy. But the finish is not a harsh finish, but it's a long finish there. But it stays there forever.
That is a tasty pour, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, so I'm glad to be able to share it, and that they give me samples to be able to share. That's kind of one of their premises is like, we come out with this cool stuff, but a lot of times people are like, I'd love to be able to try it. We're like, cool, here's a sample. Here you go.
What does your collection look like, Chris?
It's modest. I've never kind of catered out. I don't stand in lines or hunts or anything, but I've been in the business so long where I don't really have to hunt because I have contacts where I could be like, hey, can I get a bottle of this if I'm looking for it? But I've got definitely a large shelf full of stuff. But compared to most of the people in their collections, it's nothing. I have stuff we like to drink. I have stuff that have, memories attached to it. A lot of single barrels I've picked over the years because I have been involved with a lot of single barrel picks over the years, especially when I was working with Willett here in Florida. So probably over the last 3 years, almost all of the Florida Willett picks I had something to do with, if not picked myself.
That's amazing.
So
I love that.
So I've got a lot of those. Truth Serum, Florida Sunrise, Florida Sunset. a few of those over the years that I was involved with. I've still got some of those, and not much left in them. I think Truth Serum was one of my favorites, and there's only about an ounce left, and I'm saving that to share with somebody that hasn't tried it. I don't finish bottles.
I haven't tried it, Chris.
The bottles.
I think what you're telling us is we need to take a road trip to St. Pete.
Hey, come on down.
You know, my family spends
all the brokers are here. Come on and join.
my family spends time in spring break regularly, so maybe I'll look you up.
There we go.
There you go.
So
Yeah, good times.
we have not finished the Commanders Club. That we'll come back to that because we want to respect the time and the two other handshakes that you sent. So I've got one of the limited releases, the one you got labeled B1 at 119 proof. We're about to get into that.
Okay, and that is the bottle that I have in front of me, because the other two I was selling and pouring and drank and sipping on last week in Georgia, as I mentioned. The batch one is not one that I had with me because Georgia was getting batch two.
Okay.
And Florida is going to be getting batch two. So you're actually tasting one that Florida is not actually going to be receiving.
Wow.
So you're getting batch one when Florida is actually getting batch two. And the same with the rye. The rye is what, the batch two that you have there, is what's going to be landing here in Florida. And I think, actually, it already did. It landed, the end of last week. So, these are available in Florida now.
Where does it land? Because I would like to go to that airport.
Exactly. You know, funny enough, I don't know if you guys have been to the Tampa airport, but there's a giant flamingo in the main terminal of the Tampa airport.
I am familiar with
so
it.
Yeah, and so it's got a lot of social media presence, and so I want to take these when they now that they're in stock. I want to take and try and sell them to the duty free.
That's
at
awesome.
Tampa Airport with the flamingo, because this has a giant flamingo right there on the bottle. You can't miss it. It's made for Florida with the flamingo on it.
I have seen, actually, now that you say that, I've seen pictures of people in local groups that were part of bourbon groups that have posted the flamingo bottle as ones they've recently picked up. So I have actually seen pictures of the bottle.
Well, and so we were talking earlier about being able to put your own labels on things. So Big Red and I are part of the Volusia Bourbon Society, and at their membership kickoff, they shared their rare character pick, which is nice pink top and the nice flamingo, and they're on the label. And so it's while we're getting into this batch one here, why do you think that there are so many picks from rare character? And let me just qualify that by saying I probably have 7 different rare character picks in addition to this Black Angus and then these handshakes that you've sent, just from the various places that I've been to and lucky enough, a couple gifts that I've received. So why is it that you think so many people are picking rare character bottles for their bourbon clubs, their stores, their, what's nuts?
I mean, the biggest reason is because they're getting their hands on the stuff that's unique that they're not going to be able to find anywhere else. If you're picking, and I hate to point fingers at other brands, but these are good examples. I'm giving this as an example of, like, if somebody does an Elijah Craig barrel pick or a Knob Creek barrel pick or a New Riff barrel pick, all the bottles look exactly the same, except for maybe a little sticker or a little fine print across the bottom that says picked by Volusia Bourbon Society or whatever. But if you put that bottle in front of, of a kind of a normal drinking person, they're going to say, oh, I've got that at home. And Pablo found that as a restaurateur. He had all these amazing single barrels. And when he would give a pour to a customer, the customer for them to put the bottle on the bar so they could look at the bottle they were drinking, like some of the nice whiskey bourbon bars do. And he would put his single barrel pick, and the guy would say, oh, I've got that at home. And he would say, well, no, sir, this is something I've single barrel specifically selected for my restaurant. I'm like, no, I've got 2 of those. And so when he came up with this concept of putting that custom artwork on there, when you put that whatever graphic Volusia County used on their single barrel in front of someone, they're going to say, oh, I've never seen that before.
Right.
And that uniqueness of each label kind of gives that, where even though there might be 5 other NELs that landed in Florida, there's only one Black Angus.
Right.
And each one of those was a different barrel. So there is going to still be some uniqueness. Picking numerous barrels over my time, there is so much difference when you're tasting 3 of the same thing right in front of you, of the same age, same mash bill, same distillery. You can have 3 totally different taste profiles. All the different single barrel success is because they're, unique expressions, and everybody kind of has their own barrel. So each one's kind of different in their own way.
Wow, this batch one, that is really, really tasty.
So these rare character limited release, what we call RCLR, they started in 2024. We only did a bourbon in 2024. That was the Llama, so the Llama series. Pablo calls it an alpaca potato. So the Llama was 2024. 2025, we had the Fox series. So all of our rare character limited release bourbon for 2025 had a different each batch had a different graphic of a fox on it.
Fun.
For rye, they did a rye starting in 2025, and they did a Kentucky straight whiskey starting in 2025 that also had their own theme. The rye was like desert, Grand Canyon, usually something to do with land. And then the Kentucky straight whiskey usually has something to do with water. It was all kind of Japanese wood carvings last year, and this year it's surfing. So I just sent a picture to Phil of what we're actually getting in Florida, and so you guys can get a visual of what I'm talking about. And obviously the flamingo, like we discussed, is the spirit animal for 2026 for this year. So you're tasting what a lot of people would call Flamingo 1.
Okay.
Kind of talking to some of the drinkers when they were talking about what they had, this guy was like, "Oh, I've got Fox 5. And then I've got," and he would refer to them as like call signs almost. And so, some of the lingo out there with the drinkers and the bourbon collectors is that's kind of how they're referring to them. So this would be considered Flamingo 1. This is a 119.86, it looks like 5.6 maybe. Those 5s and 8s look similar. 119 proof. Kind of the story behind these limited releases. We would call it a small batch, but they're even smaller than small batch. So we're calling them our limited release. For the bourbons, batches of about 15 to 20 barrels. For the rye and Kentucky straight whiskeys, we're blending batches of probably 10 to 15 barrels. Ages anywhere from 7 to 15 years. So we're blending between ages, we're blending between mash bills. And sometimes, like this is labeled a straight bourbon whiskey. Some of the batches are Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. So we would be blending only Kentucky in those. This is blending Indiana and Kentucky. So if you're getting a lot of layers there, if you're getting a lot of complexity, that's because we're bringing in so many different flavors from different mash bills, from different ages of whiskey, and also different distilleries, of course. So these are kind of fun blends where each one's going to be different. Each batch is going to be different. Batch 1, Flamingo 1, and batch 2, Flamingo 2, completely different. I could have sent you batch 2, but I sent you batch 1 for a reason. Well, I like batch 1 a lot better than batch 2.
Let me just tell you that one of the notes that I get on this is kind of that buttery from butterscotch that
Sure.
It just kind of sticks and coats your palate, which I absolutely love. So we did just pour a round of the batch 2, the rye. So
Okay.
any special conversation you'd like to have about that particular one?
Yeah, so the fun thing, we're really getting, cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers.
We're really getting, cheers. We're getting a ton of notoriety for our ryes and the batches of ryes from last year. And this batch 2 is a great example.
Great nose, by
of
the way.
what we're doing with ryes. Oh man, just wait for it.
Yeah.
I mean, so Chad Watson is kind of Pablo's right-hand man. He's our guy at our bottling and blending facility in Lexington, who Pablo says, this is what we're working on, and then bing, bang, boom, and then Chad makes it happen. We've got a great team there, Chad,
Nice.
James, Toby, 2 good guys. And Chad has My Daily Bourbon podcast. When he first blended this batch 2, we had like our little WhatsApp group chat, and he's like, heads up, guys, I just finished batch 2, and it's fire. I was like, all right, cool. So he got the sample. This is the first bottle I opened because I'm like, this guy put a spotlight on this. He said this is something good.
Sure.
I'm like, let's see. I'll be the judge of that, right? So then I tasted it. I'm like, okay, yep, that's pretty tasty. It's got that nose, that rye nose. You know, it's got that herbaceous, that menthol, mid to it. I think kind of the key with our ryes is the fact that we're blending Indiana and Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
You've got 2 completely different styles. Between Indiana 95.5 and kind of your typical Kentucky rye. Most of these are probably 8 or 9 years. I believe this is an 8.5 year Kentucky blended with 8.5 year, Indiana.
God damn, that's good.
Isn't that good?
That nose is something I don't know if I have ever experienced before.
Chris, I think this is terrible, and you should just send it all to us. We'll take it off your hands.
Put it in the middle of the tomorrow. No problem. A partial bottle's okay? I've got out a half bottle here.
It's going to have to be. We'll make it work.
Yeah, I figured. So yeah, that's a great example of kind of what we're doing with rye. And I had a similar batch. It was last year, so 2025 batch 6. And it was another 8-year Kentucky, 8-year Indiana blend, and it's same. It just hits on all cylinders, on the nose, on the body, and it's just it's a very, very well blended.
People don't realize how good Indiana is at producing. My Secret Santa this past year sent me a bottle from Indiana, and a lot of people are giving Texas a lot of credit recently with their bourbons and whiskeys, but people don't give Indiana nearly enough credit. And I'm just sitting here nosing this. Like, I've had a couple of sips, but I've just had my nose in this Glen of this batch 2 this entire time. And yeah, Indiana doesn't get nearly enough credit for what they're producing.
That is amazing.
Definitely not. And it's one of those things where I also heard, kind of fun fact back in the day, before Prohibition, there was more distilleries in Indiana than there was Kentucky.
Really?
And after Prohibition, more just opened back up in Kentucky than reopened. And most of the medicinal ones that got the grant to stay open during Prohibition and produce were in Kentucky, not Indiana. So, Indiana has a huge distilling history. And a lot of people don't even think about that. They just think Kentucky. They also still think Kentucky, bourbon can only come from Kentucky. Which is one that I still have to dispel, and bless their hearts.
Yeah, we still dispel that too.
Yeah.
Especially for people who don't really like, their version of whiskey is Fireball.
Sure.
So, yeah. And you know what? Good for them, because it keeps them out of my market for what I look for on the shelf, so they can have it.
There you go. No competition.
So I love that. Well, Chris.
The great thing about these batches too is the price point. These are complex, high aged, barrel proof, but they're on the shelf. I think SRP $85.99. So for what they are and the price point that they land at, and it's not like these are going to be sitting on the shelf,
Sure.
2 cases deep. We only get, we just got 40 cases. 40 cases of that rye for the whole state.
Wow.
That's it.
So you just need to
split up between 4 warehouses. Yeah.
Just send us to the right place, and we'll take some of that off the shelf.
And does Publix ever see any of these?
That's a good question. Yes, we have a really good partnership with Publix right now. They've recently kind of expanded their single barrel program. I think someone told me they went from doing 0 to, in 2024 they did 30, and then last year they did 300 barrel pick at Publix.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Which that's quite a scale, right?
Right.
So somebody finally got it. So they do. There is some actually really, kind of Costco hot dog-esque labels coming from Publix.
I can't wait to find that.
Will appreciate this, actually.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little hint. One of them's got a key lime pie on the label.
Nice.
Okay.
It just caught my attention.
Yes, sir. Please tell me that there's a pub sub coming. There's got to be a pub sub coming.
Is it chicken finger pub sub on a freaking label?
Fucking A.
Hell yeah.
I will say, I gave him that idea.
That's awesome.
I will take credit.
I'm proud of you for that.
Yeah, I'm a humble guy. If I didn't come up with the idea, I will say, no, that wasn't my idea.
Hopefully that comes to fruition.
It's on its way. They approve the labels, and I think we're going to be bottling. We're going to be bottling that probably in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, so Chris, please tell us. Please tell us. I can't wait.
We'll let you know for sure. It's fun. And again, another example of kind of the fun things that you can do that are going to be catchy. And I think after seeing how people reacted to the Costco hot dog, that I think when the key lime pie and the chicken finger pub sub come out, labels from Publix, that people are going to, similar reaction. Hopefully they won't be going for $1,000.
I was going to say
maybe $150.
we better get in on the ground floor. We're going to have to be really prepared.
I'm going to buy a few bottles.
Exactly. Just in case.
So, Chris, I want to go ahead and just kind of kick off the closing part of this and just say,
Okay.
thank you so very much for spending this time with us and sharing this nuggets of truth that you've had, educating us.
Indeed.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure. You got it. My pleasure being as great to meet you guys and to make this happen. Just from a casual run in at a great whiskey tasting at a cigar bar,
That was a hell of a good time.
Thanks for inviting me.
So that's a good segue for us to get into it. And we still have a Commander, a limited release batch 1 and a limited release batch 2 that's still in my glasses. So I'm going to be having some fun through this. But I'm going to have to focus so that way these old eyes can read. So for those that know, we have a recurring segment where we go through Am I the Asshole?
Is there a Kyle?
In this case, there is not a Kyle.
Damn it, man.
But I think anybody that's the asshole can be a Kyle. So you get to be the judge.
Okay.
And Chris will appreciate your voice. And Big Red, you're not always in the studio with us. So, of course, we appreciate your take.
I'm sad there's no Kyle, but let's see what happens.
We'll make a Kyle if we have to.
There you go. And just for those that don't know, we're going to go ahead and read through the story. We're going to catch some takes on it. But before we do, for all the listeners out there, if you've enjoyed what you've heard so far, please like, follow, comment, share, tell everybody that they need to talk shit today in your car, at your house, in your school. Forget your homework. Just drop the podcast. Listen, just cue us up. Just, you'll appreciate that you did. So, getting right into this here. The segment itself, says the Bottle Bandit, if that's any kind of setup here.
Ooh, I like where this is going. Let's see.
All right. So, I need to know if I'm the asshole here, says the narrator, unnamed. Because my wife thinks I am. My best friends think that I am. And at this point, I'm starting to wonder, but hear me out. I've been collecting bourbon for about 4 years. Nothing crazy, maybe 80 bottles, a few unicorns, mostly stuff I actually drink. And I can appreciate that because I only have a handful of bottles I've never cracked.
Only 79.
Okay, a handful. I don't have 79,
You
sir.
got big hands.
You've actually drank most of what I've got, so shush.
Whatever, man.
I'm going to start shipping you scotch. And Big Red's like, you can ship me scotch.
Ship me scotch. I'm the scotch drinker in this group.
Chris, what's your take on scotch real quick? Fan or not a fan?
No, thank you.
I like you even more.
It's a hard pass. And I've tried because I've sold over my years. I've sold numerous great scotches, and I just can't. I can't get into it. I like bourbon. I like rum. I like a little sweeter. No, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, that's like me with IPAs. IPAs belong in the trash, and I'm sorry for the trash that they go into. So, all right, let's see here. One of my grails, my absolute grail, is a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle 20-year that I got at my store's lottery 2 years ago. I have not opened it. It sits in a specific spot in my collection. I know exactly where it is at all times. It's basically my firstborn child, but in bottle form.
I already don't like this guy because if you buy a bottle, you're supposed to open it unless you have a set date that you're opening it. But we'll let him go and we'll see what happens.
True story. My brother-in-law, let's call him Derek, comes to visit for the holidays. Derek does not drink whiskey. He drinks White Claw and occasionally a Bud Light if he's feeling adventurous. Derek does not understand the concept of a whiskey collection. To Derek, a bottle is a bottle.
Uh-oh.
I'm afraid of where this is going.
Yeah, me too.
So, now, I made one mistake. I told Derek about this bottle last Thanksgiving. I explained that it was rare, that it was valuable, and that it was special to me. He nodded, said it was cool, man. I thought we were good. Fast forward to Christmas Eve. We're having people over. I'm in the kitchen. My wife is doing her thing. Fucking Derek, goes into the whiskey room without asking, finds the Pappy, and opens it.
I think Derek's the Kyle.
Well,
I may have just had a heart attack.
Derek is like Swahili for dick.
we're about to find out. So, he pours himself and two of his buddies full rocks glasses. Rocks glasses with ice. He put ice in a 20-year-old Pappy Van Winkle.
I just choked when you said that because I was taking a sip of that Commander.
I walk in and I see three men standing in my living room holding what is probably $400 worth of whiskey in rocks glasses like they're at an Applebee's happy hour. Sorry, I need to collect myself here. Oh, okay. I lost it. I said some things. I took the bottle. I recorked it, even though the damage was already done. And I told Derek that he needed to leave. on Christmas Eve in front of my in-laws. My wife says I overreacted. She says, it's just whiskey. Come on, it's not just whiskey. She says, Derek didn't know better, and I should have had the bottle somewhere where he couldn't access it. She says, kicking him out at Christmas ruined the holiday for everyone. But here's what I need people to understand. That wasn't just a bottle. That was 2 years of waiting. That was getting up at 6 a.m. to enter a lottery. That was a piece of my collection that I worked for. And Derek, he opened it without asking and poured it over fucking ice for people who had no idea what they were drinking. Am I the asshole?
Hell no.
I think we sort of made our opinions clear about that throughout this. Oh, I almost had a
There was no question. We've had many Am I the Asshole segments where we've gone back and forth and we bellyached over who's the Kyle, who's the asshole. Derek, fuck your life.
So, Chris, from your perspective, you said you don't wait in line. You've done enough. You get a little bit of access. What do you think? What's your take on Derek here?
Derek is the asshole. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing. Even if he's a White Claw, Bud Light, Boone's Farm drinker, he knew what he was doing because, right? When I hear White Claw, that's what I hear. Boone's Farm.
For those of you who don't know, Boone's Farm is what White Claw used to be many years ago before most of you were born.
So yeah, he had to have known he was doing. Throwing him out, that's probably extreme. But you just need to get your point across. Like I can say many things to someone and not yell or raise my voice, but I'm going to get my point across.
Sure.
So you can sternly word things that he's going to understand. Dude, you're an idiot.
Right.
Or in this situation,
You're an asshole.
So let me pause there, Chris, because you said that you can sternly word and get your point across. But give me the history of Whiskey Gorilla as you explained to me when we met. That'll kind of help prop that up for folks.
Yeah, I guess that would help. My Instagram is Whiskey Gorilla. Give me a follow. Whiskey Gorilla has been kind of my persona for a long time. I'm a very large human, 6'6", 290. Played rugby for 20 years.
A nice light sport.
Nice light one-on-one sport. And so with my size, I've used, the definitely as a good image for Whiskey Gorilla, but in the dorms my freshman year of college, I earned the nickname Grape 8.
Nice.
Even one of my buddies to this day sends me a happy birthday grape.
Nice.
Because the grape ape, a 60-foot purple gorilla.
Sure.
That's me. And then, when I first got in the industry, I sold all the Gallo wine. And one of my coworkers, so we kind of got in an altercation in a Publix, store wine aisle with another competitor. Words only, of course, words only. And he's like, man, you're the Gallo gorilla. And so the gorilla aspect stuck with my Instagram, 15 years ago when I set it up as Whiskey Gorilla.
That's awesome. And it has nothing to do with the grape flavored Mad Dog 2020, right? Not aging ourselves again.
Listening to this story,
definitely.
Mrs. Big Red has a party for her birthday coming up, and I may take one of my bottles and hide it in my closet and lock the door so this can't happen.
So let's all address a couple things about this story. I think, first off, we all agree Derek is the asshole. So, Chris, thanks for chiming in on that. What about ice?
You got it.
Is that something that we need to address here? Like, is it really ever acceptable to take your pappy and pour it over ice?
If you're asking me, I am a big believer, drink it how you like it.
Sure.
My take is I'm not going to tell you how to order your steak. Don't tell me how to drink my whiskey.
I like it.
I'm sure.
I'm going to taste something like that. Probably neat to start. Anything like that, single barrel, I'll try neat to start. Personally. And then if I think it needs an ice cube, I'll add an ice cube to dilute it if I think it's a little hot. As we started the call, I was drinking an old fashioned. I'm a cocktail guy.
Sure.
I can sip on old fashions, Manhattan, great boozy stirred cocktails that my bartender friends will make me with great whiskey. I'm a fan of that. So I'm a proponent of drink it how you like it. So adding an ice cube, but I know that the image of these awful white ice cubes that they probably poured it over.
Right.
It looks like frozen milk. I'm sure this wasn't a crystal clear sphere, right?
Right.
This wasn't a crystal clear sphere. Nothing refined like that. I'm sure.
I'm a fan of Manhattans and Old Fashions, so I feel you. And I was at a bar that carries some high-end selections, some Pappies, some George T. Stagg, not Junior, but actual GTS.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy ordered Pappy, I think it was the Lot B, and he asked for it on the rocks. And the bartender just looked at him. He said, I'm going to pour it without the ice first, and once you sip it, if you think it still needs the ice, I'll happily give it to you.
Nice.
But I'm not going to ruin it until then.
Wow.
So, a couple questions then, still. If we could play devil's advocate for Derek for just a moment. The dude's clueless.
Or is he?
He doesn't know, does he?
He went for that bottle.
He went for that bottle.
He was told it was special.
Exactly. And it wasn't open. That's a bold move.
Should have gone for an open bottle if he was going to go raid someone's shelf. Fair.
Agree.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I'm sure there was dozens he could have picked from.
Right. Well, I mean, after a couple of years worth of collecting, I know what mine looks like. So yeah, there's a couple to look at. So, to the wife's point though, should the bottle have been inaccessible?
Like I said, I'm locking my one bottle of Barrel 603 in my closet this weekend.
Well, you said that after reading this segment.
It was a kid's birthday party, maybe hide the alcohol. But we're all adults and it's Christmas Eve. You shouldn't have to hide something from an adult. I think. I don't know.
That's a good viewpoint.
So this is Big Red's wife's birthday party. And I know most of the people, or at least some of the people that'll be there. I think when they see that, they'll probably say, I don't know what I'm getting into. And they would probably avoid it. But
it is in the higher end cabinet. I have 2 liquor cabinets because we ran out of space because I have more bottles than I need. If that's such a thing, I don't know if it is.
You take that shit out of the air.
Yeah,
you don't need that. No.
I have a cabinet for if you touch it, I don't care. I'm not even going to ask. And a cabinet for if you ask, I'll probably let you have it. But this one specific bottle that doesn't exist anymore is going to be locked away and only given to very specific people.
Good thing I'm coming to your party.
You are one of those people. And Chris, if you ever show up, you're one of those people too, because this is a bottle that everybody should experience once if they know what they're talking about.
Tell us what that bottle is.
Well, I would like that.
This is the Dream Spirits Bottle 603 that, for listeners who have listened to previous episodes, our interview with Big Mike Bourbon knows all about the Barrel 603. It doesn't exist anymore. There are no more of it available to purchase. Sure. It is sold out, and I am going to savor every drop of this bottle.
Well, I got to say that my collection is starting to get more of those bottles where there are not going to be any more of these. So like this Commander's Club that's right here, I know that unless I can find a bottle, this is all I'm ever going to have of it. So
wait a minute. Pour that back into the sample bottle.
My Glen is getting empty on the Commander's Club, and I'm very sad.
Yeah.
You might want to use this little crack pipe looking water thing you got to just take drops here and there.
So I guess the
microdose Commander's Club.
Oh yeah. So, I just finished mine.
Well, hopefully I can find it someplace where somebody doesn't know what they've actually got. So that way I can get it at a decent price. But I guess
for perspective, there's 150 bottles in the entire state of Florida. So,
okay.
152 if you include the sample bottle that I have.
Well, we'll have to keep our eyes open for it and see where it's sold at and see what we can find.
Yeah, where can we find that? Just out of morbid curiosity.
Right. So, we usually give our allocations to people who have supported our single barrels and other items in the past. So if there's, 5-star liquors in Wekiva Springs, Sam Patel's a great guy, kind of in your area.
I've heard of that.
Of ours.
Yep, we're familiar with 5-star.
And so you usually, if they've gotten a single barrel with us, they have a good chance of getting allocated some of the cool stuff. Okay. So I would start with them.
Okay. And then going back to our Am I the Asshole segment here, instead of interviewing Chris for where we can find his bourbon, the last question that we really have here is more for you, Chris. Have you ever experienced a moment like this where somebody got a hold of something that you had a huge amount of respect for, or, coveted some way, shape, or form, but they didn't know what they had and they just kind of, for lack of a better term, took it for granted, abused it, didn't pay it the same kind of lofty respect that you might have?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of times that I say to myself, that's not how this works. And it reminds me, there was this commercial, a Facebook commercial back in the day, these old ladies, and the ladies like putting photographs on the wall.
Yeah,
and her friends are like, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I have to say that, and I reference that commercial sometimes, because there's sometimes when people, I guess I'll give an example. So I was at a barrel selection up in Pensacola, and as a salesperson with a distributor, you have to have like a salesperson license with the state of Florida. It's not a liquor license like a store has, but you have like a liquor salesperson license. And so somebody mentioned that, and this guy's like, "Oh, we should just run our single barrels through you." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Well, you have a liquor license, so we should just, hey, hook us up, and we'll run all our single barrels through you instead of selling it through a liquor store like the law says." and I was just like, No, that's not how this works. Like, that's literally illegal, and that's not how this works.
Right.
And it's, kind of like, hey, man, like, read a book. You're not going to figure out a way to screw the system. This isn't prohibition, and you're going to bootleg it from Kentucky.
That's funny.
So because we've talked about prohibition a couple of times here, I'll say a quick fact that I learned watching somebody who took a trip into, I'm trying to remember the distillery that they went into, but it might have been Buffalo Trace, and they were going to be part of a barrel pick there. And one of the facts that they give on the tour is during Prohibition in Kentucky at the time, there were about 2 million residents and about 6 million prescriptions written for ailments in which so you could get a pint of whiskey that was bottled in bond every 10 days. That's how frequently. And then all of a sudden, everybody in the family had some kind of back issue, anxiety issue, some sort of pain that only a bottle of bottled in bond whiskey could go ahead and suffice. So yeah, during that per year, there were 6 million scripts written for whiskey for 2 million residents.
The old joke of going to the Old West town, the ghost town or the prospector town, saying, yeah, there's 50 people and 5 snakes, and the snakes are exhausted because whiskey was one of the prescriptions for a snake bite.
Oh, Jesus.
I love that. So, well, clearly I think we've all agreed that Derek is the asshole. And while there might have been some different ways to respond, I think we can all identify with your very special bottle. Just imagine that our friend Penis Head went ahead and just cracked open that 603 and just took it straight to the head and then set it down and was like, look at what I did. What would you say to that one, Big Red?
I would pummel him into the dirt. Chris, for reference, X is referring to an event that happened at one of my house's Halloween parties that we don't need to get into details for, but Penis Head is a very accurate description of that night, and I would pummel him mercilessly, especially because he doesn't drink whiskey pretty much at all. So if he opened that bottle, I'd be especially upset.
All right. So, one of our recurring segments here, and, Lumpy, if you can go ahead and give your routine, regular pitch for our mental health segment here.
One of the segments we always try to get into before our mental health segment is talking about the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. That number is 988. You can call, text, or chat. If you're in distress, or if you know someone who is in distress, make sure they get that number. We need you here. We need you to be talking shit today. Again, that number is 988.
You can crawl, you can walk, you can run, but you can't give up.
The world is better with you in it, I promise.
Especially drinking what we're drinking today. God, find one of these bottles. Get down. Have some fun.
Yeah, thanks as always for this, Chris. This is really fun. All right. So what we want to get into this week is talking about kind of the passion that you may be into. And Chris, I think you have kind of a unique perspective here as a person who's been kind of the brand ambassador, the go-between between brands and the community at large, and the various roles that you've had in this industry. So we want to go on about the ideas of, what does it take to maintain your passion while not turning it into a laboring job that you dread? Confronting the burnout, and especially that idea of the imposter syndrome. And for those that don't know, imposter syndrome basically means that you never think that you're the right person to be doing what you're doing, that you're always faking it, and that at some point in time, someone's going to say something that will expose how much you are not the right qualified person to be doing what you're doing. So just kind of wanted to get into that. And then, Chris, from your perspective, have you had experiences where you felt like you had to be the smartest person in the room and that you might get exposed for not being that person?
It's kind of ironic that this is the topic for today, because this is something that I had not heard of or knew was a thing. There's times in my career that I might have had insecurities or paranoias that maybe I can't do this, or I'm not built or knowledgeable enough to be successful. My position before this that I took with Willett, I actually had a very heavy dose of imposter syndrome. I had been heavily courting them to work for them. And, initially was just looking for more of a Southeastern position. But then that started out as kind of a national sales manager position. And then when they came and actually offered it, it was a vice president of sales position. And I was like, oh, okay. And I started feeling insecurities, and I started feeling paranoia. It's like, I don't know if I'm built yet for that and can handle that. And a friend of mine put a segment on his LinkedIn podcast about imposter syndrome and spelled it right out there. And I needed to see that. It was the universe putting that in front of me. And I was like, oh, this is the thing. So this isn't just me in my head and making myself crazy. It's a thing. And that doesn't mean you can't do it, but you're questioning yourself. Sure. And you're it's part of insecurity. It spawns from, I think, insecurity.
So how did you confront those insecurities and get it to the point where you felt better about your confidence in executing that job or anything where you felt those sorts of things?
I think first learning that what I was going through was a thing, that's the first time I'd ever heard the term imposter syndrome. And I was like, oh, okay. It's like you're reading through WebDM and all the symptoms, you're like, oh my gosh, all those are my symptoms. Right. And all of a sudden you have that. And, I think just putting a spotlight and identifying that this is a thing and other people have this, and that doesn't mean that you're not equipped for it, unless you aren't. But sure. It made me work harder. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to make sure I put my head down and know what I'm doing so I can be successful and show these people that I can do this and show myself. Because really, this was all in my head. The imposter syndrome is all something that you're having to fight. But, a lot of times it's just you, and you need to figure out how to overcome it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I think that there's a lot of truth to that. And I can say in my career, even in just getting this podcast going, here we are at episode 17, right? And this is something that we didn't think necessarily anybody would really hook into. And we just figured, fuck it, we'll just do this anyway. And I'm glad that we did. I've had a whole lot to overcome just in being prepared for this, just feeling like my voice, the thing that I use in this podcast, was something that somebody else could listen to. You know how it is when you hear your own voice. It doesn't sound right because it's not what you normally hear when you hear yourself.
I absolutely understand. I hate the way I sound on recordings every time, so I feel that.
So I think that imposter syndrome is real. And where I've experienced it the most probably is professionally, because I've, like you, probably found an opportunity, ran with it, and then filled myself into the role.
Was it fake it till you make it?
Kind of. It feels that way at first anyway,
no, I get
because
it.
You're not sure.
That was humorous and sincerity at the same time.
Yeah. But the reality is that I'm pretty damn good at what I do. And I wouldn't be in the position that I am professionally were I not, and not had the experience, the mentorship, the ability to make all the fucking mistakes that I've made, and lucky enough to actually learn from the bruises that I've had over time. So I don't know, Chris, if you reflect the same kind of experience professionally, but I'm at this point feeling pretty confident in what I do, but it has not always been that way.
Sure. Yeah. You have to gain confidence and figure out a way to overcome whatever's making you self-conscious and insecurity. So yeah, you just have to figure it out. And also with positions like that, you need to figure out what makes things click and work and how to do it and do your job and do it your way. And then if you're still not successful, then I don't know, maybe you are an imposter.
Then maybe you are an imposter. Sure.
Well,
maybe.
But I think you're right that you have to examine how you're doing and recognize failure. And if you are failing at what you're doing, try to understand why. And you seek input from others. You seek out, mentorship, training. Because you said that you dug in and worked hard, learned more, so that way you could be what you felt you had to be for the role. Lumpy, you've been a professional at your company for how long now?
I've been doing what I'm doing about 19 years now. So,
yeah. And that certainly was a path to get where you are.
It was. It took me a lot of time to get thick skin. It took me time to accept I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't in my profession. So, a lot of times, as the stakes get higher in certain aspects, that those imposter feelings sometimes get a little more strong. With any challenge, you have to overcome it or not. You know what I mean? If you don't overcome it, then, well, you're on the wrong bus.
Sure.
And when you realize you're on the wrong bus, what do? You get off.
Well,
So
I think that's an important point too. And Chris, you said as much. If you're actually the imposter, then you need to recognize that and make some choices. And maybe that's getting off the bus. Maybe that's finding the training or finding the person that you can mentor with to go through. But let me ask you guys this: was there a moment that kind of set you straight, where you recognize that no, I'm not an imposter. I really do know what the fuck I'm doing?
So the job I currently have, when I applied, it was a application because the job paid more. Let's be realistic. And I didn't think I was qualified for it. I had some interest in and some information in the background, but I didn't know what I was getting into. Something I said in the interview triggered my managers to hire me, and I don't know why. And even they said later on they didn't know why they hired me initially, but there was something there. And yeah, it was I don't know what I'm doing, but I buckled down and I had the opportunity to get off the bus at the bus stop and take off running, or stay on, follow it to the end of the route, and figure out what was happening. And there was a moment I went out to a conference and I was relatively new, didn't know what I was doing. But I went to a conference and I was talking with one of our clients at the event. We were doing an expo, and they came up and they were asking me questions and I was answering the questions. And half the time I was making up the answers because, let's be real, I had an idea, but I didn't know what I was doing. And at the end of it, they shook my hand. They said, thank you. They took some of the information. They said, this really helped. And they walked away. And it was that click of, okay, I didn't know what I was doing when I got here, but maybe I actually know what I'm talking about. And I've spent the last 6 years, coming up on 6 years at this job, going, I'm going to figure it out. Maybe I'm not as unqualified as I think I am. And sometimes it's putting in the effort. And you may be an imposter when you get there. And there's the being an imposter when you get there and not putting any effort in and going, whoops, this was wrong, and dipping, which is legit if that's your choice.
Sure.
Or there is the maybe being a potential imposter when you get there, but going, I'm going to put in the work and figure this out so that I'm not faking it anymore. And I faked it for the first year or two until I hit my groove and I made it. And it kind of went from there. So, yeah, I think there is a bit to that.
And if we could see you now.
Well, I guess to close this out, first off, Chris, I think you hit on something that's really important, is that even knowing that this idea of imposter syndrome is there, it kind of lends reality to the insecurities that we might be feeling, and it allows us to identify what they are. So I think that's a really good call out. I think also that
Thank you.
for anybody that might be experiencing this is, first off, and Chris, I think you rightly said this is kind of an inner dialogue. This is the conversation you have with yourself. And don't gatekeep yourself. You probably are doing better than you think you are. And maybe the reason why you're downplaying yourself is because to talk about what you do well, like earlier I said, I'm damn good at my job. And it took me a long time for me to feel like I could say I was good at my job, even though I've known it for a long time, because it feels egotistical. But I think it's okay to be confident and to say I am good. Because I think, I'm sure people have heard these like quirky interview questions. It's like, well, tell me what your best qualities are. And people always waffle at those things because they're like, well, I don't want to come off like I'm a know-it-all, or like I think I'm so much better than everybody else. When in fact, in an interview, you're trying to sell yourself. You are better than everybody else, motherfucker. Like, you are the bomb. So
I think there's a big difference between confidence and arrogance.
yes.
The confidence should show completely different. It's a humble side of arrogance. And you can be confident. And like, I feel like sometimes that you have to show more confidence to overcome, again, we talked about your own insecurity. Everybody's got their own insecurity.
Sure.
The people that, I feel bad about my teeth, or I feel bad about whatever. And you just need to figure out a way to get over it. And what, nobody knows what the other person is identifying with or troubling them. And to be honest with you, the imposter syndrome topic tonight, that's the first time I've ever talked about that out loud.
Wow. Well, thanks for joining us for it.
Well, Chris, again, we all here at Talking Shit Today want to thank you for being on tonight. We're going to wrap this up. We'd like to give a guest an opportunity, and please don't feel obligated. Do you want to present a toast tonight?
I'd love to present a toast to good friends and good drinks, and good people.
I like it. And we are the fragile.
We are the fragile ones.
There you go.
Talking shit today.
We are the fragile. Cheers.
Right. Chris, thank you very much for joining us. Can't wait to have you on again. Good night.
Have a good night.
Cheers.
Yo, the time is up, the mic's gone cold. We drop the talk real hot and bold. From Lumpy to General Lex, ain't no delay. Thanks for talking shit with us today. Hey yo, thanks for talking shit with Lumpy and X. Breaking it down till there's nothing complex. Riding the beat as we close the show. Catch you next time on the late night flow. Spin the dial, rewind the tape. We keep it real, this ain't no escape. Laughs and truth served raw, not sweet. Mic drop, Lumpy and X, bring the heat. Hey yo, thanks for talking shit with Lumpy and X. Dropping truths and making you reflect. We out like a jammer, smooth and slow. See you next time where the convos glow. Words in the air as the beat fades out. Lumpy and X, that's what we're about. So keep it locked till the very last say. Thanks for talking shit, we out today. Yo, the time is up, the mic's gone cold. We drop the talk real hot and bold. From Lumpy to General Lex, ain't no delay. Thanks for talking shit with us today. Hey yo, thanks for talking shit with Lumpy and X. Breaking it down till there's nothing complex. Riding the beat as we close the show. Catch you next time night flow. Spin the